Isn't it good to be sober? Yeah! That was kind of weak for being, nobody smoked crack today. That was kind of weak. All right, let's pray this friendly prayer. God, grant us serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right, guys, once again, I'm Michael. I'm alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 1st, 2009. This is the Primary Purpose Group annual 12-step workshop. Now, we've done, most of you know, you've been here already. We usually do the page for page and the line for line, but it takes like 6 months, 4 to 6 months to do that. And what we found is we love doing that, and it's quite the experience. And if you're interested in doing that, come see me after the meeting. I'll tell you when we're going to do it again. It's life-changing for sure, but when we do it with the community, what we found is that about the 4-step, a lot of people leave, and which I understand, I suppose, but we don't want you to leave. So we want you to stay, and so we thought if we could condense this without leaving out all the pertinent information and do this thing in 12 weeks, which is very tricky to do, to cover all the information, especially when we get to the 4-step, because to some degree, you got about a week to work the step that you were on to stay current in the workshop. And so if you don't stay current in the workshop, what tends to happen is I will fall behind in the workshop, and then I'll go, and I'm a step or two behind, and then I say, Sunday night, it's cold out, I'm just not gonna go. And then you miss out on some vital stuff. And so even if you get behind a little bit, I just ask one of us for help. We'll sit down with you, we'll explain it to you. You can come sit at my desk. There's been millions and millions of steps worked at the desk, I promise. And so we'll help you in any way we can, but we encourage you to stay current. So there's a couple of things. We have this banquet coming up, the Primary Purpose Group banquet in February. There's a flyer up here with the QR code. You can scan it. Somebody is recording this workshop, so if you miss it, there is, I don't know, Corey would know how to find that or whatever. It's on YouTube. Okay. And our Primary Purpose Group Facebook page, it is a private group. You can join that to stay current with the events that we do. We're a very busy group. And so I don't know if you know this or not, but there is a difference between going to AA and being in AA. There's a difference. I can go to the meetings and go 2 minutes before the meeting and leave as soon as the prayer's over and skedaddle. And I talked about that on the first week to where we're almost like hummingbirds. And I go to the meeting, suck a little sap out of this flower, and fly around, just keep sucking everywhere I go. And the difference is, and we'll talk more about it when we get to the tradition tonight, is that after I have had a spiritual awakening as a result of working steps, if you came here today and you worked steps in a way where you was not obsessed to drink today, the miracle in that we were just talking about that is enough to sing hallelujah probably for eternity. I mean, if you can't remember what it was like to say, I'm never going to drink again, I'm never going to do whatever it is again, but you did it and you couldn't stop. And you said it over and over, and every day, it was like Groundhog Day, over and over. And all of a sudden, we work the steps and it's gone. We ought to be singing songs or something up in here, right? Speaking in tongues or something. Because that's a miracle, you see? And so that miracle is our responsibility to share that message so other people can have that same experience too. Because I guarantee you, somebody's walking down the street right now, way more than just one person, and they're cold, and they're washed out, and they're fiending, and they started drinking, and then they woke up, the physical allergy, the phenomenal craving is just whooping on them right now, and they got to get another one, and they're cold, and they're hungry, and they got nowhere to go. And so if you're a human being and not a psychopath, then your heart goes out to them. And so the cool thing is Aaron will tell you, wherever Aaron's at, where's Aaron? Aaron, I'm going to use you a little bit tonight. Aaron, we talked about, he did such a good job last night up in New York. But he reminded me of when he was doing his 5th step. He was saying, man, every time I come, because he had some stints in and out like most of us. And he said, every time I come back, I get it all back real quick. I just get it all back. And I said to him, you think that's for you? And he said, I don't know. I said, maybe that's so you can go be helpful to other people. Like you're getting your home and your car and your job and you're coming out of this somehow maybe that's God saying, hey, go carry that message. You're responsible for that. You see? And so who has not been here? Who's the first time here? Uh-oh. I like to do a recap, but boy, you guys are stretching it on this one. Okay, so I will do my very best. So step one, we discussed, if you do not have one of these workbooks, this is what we're using to go through the steps. We do have some extras. We're Sean. Sean will get you one. The steps that the guides that we're using is in this book. It's called the Recovered 12-Step Workbook. Some of the stuff that we have borrowed, if you look in it, some of it's, everything in it from the big book. Every single thing. And so I wrote this 12-step guide, except for there's a couple things that was borrowed from the Fellowship of the Spirit. So everything in this is 100% right on the, and I could show you, it's all from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Every single thing in here. It's not my opinion. It's not some shit I made up. It's what it is in the big book, and we found it to be very effective. So if you don't have one of these, see Sean after the meeting, get you one. And if you're first time here and you want to keep coming, we love to have you. You can come here and sit here and hummingbird it out. We don't care. We're glad you're here. But we want you to catch up. Catch up in your step work, and that's the whole purpose of this. We want you to work the steps. So real quick, we worked step one, and a lot of times we talked about the reason why, especially if you've been sober for a while and you kind of get away from doing some things, get away from making your amends, get away from your 10th step, get away from prayer and meditation, nightly review, devotions, all these sponsorship, your meeting attendance may be way down. I don't know what you got going on. And I've been in every single thing I've mentioned, I've experienced myself. And the reason why is because I lose my way when I lose my why, right? And so the why is because I'm powerless over alcohol and then my life is unmanageable. And I'm not powerless over alcohol just for some phantom reason. The big book in the 12 steps says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. I'm not saying I'm powerless over alcohol because I've been to jail, because I lost custody of my kids, because I don't have my driver's license. That's not what makes me powerless. It's a shallow misjustice of our program. The big book, in the doctor's opinion, the little doctor who loved alcoholics was Dr. Silkworth, and he worked with alcoholics for many, many years, and he had a theory of what the problem was. And he shared that with Alcoholics Anonymous, but back then, if he shared his theory, he would have been cast out of medical society. So it had to be he didn't put his name in it because he would have been cast out. Later on, years go by, the American Medical Association then proves this doctor's theory, or doctor's opinion, like our chapter is called, proved it to be true. So then the family allowed Alcoholics Anonymous to use his name, which was Dr. Silkworth. The reason that we're powerless is because we have a physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady. The physical allergy to alcohol is not something that we just made up. It's not something, because for a long time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I really believed that you're telling me I have a physical allergy to alcohol. And a lot of times they'd say stuff like this to me. Are you allergic to alcohol? And I'd say, I don't know. And they say, I'm allergic to alcohol. When I drink, I break out in a crack pipe, right? And they'll say stuff to me like, I'm allergic to alcohol. When I drink, I break out in handcuffs. I can relate to those things 100%, but still it's such a shallow attempt at as far as a page 30 quote being that I have to fully concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And then the next sentence, that this is the first step in recovery. I cannot fully concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic if I believe that the physical allergy to alcohol is I'm going to break out in damn handcuffs. That may very well be true. I probably will break out in handcuffs. If I smoke some weed tonight or do something crazy like that, I'm going to try to talk Rachel into help me carry the TV out. And she's going to say, why? And I'll say, I'll tell you later. Right? That's exactly what's going to happen for me, right? So this physical allergy really is a physical allergy, that I'm sincerely biologically different than my fellows. That an alcoholic, normal human being, we've all heard this in IOP classes, can digest alcohol at the rate of 1 ounce per hour. That's across the board. That's a pretty average statement statistically. Alcoholics cannot digest alcohol at the rate of 1 ounce per hour. We have an extremely difficult time digesting alcohol. When I put alcohol into my system with my alcoholic body, my digestive system has a very difficult time. My digestive system would say, I need help to process this alcohol. I can't pass it. I can't digest it, right? And so my body does what it does because it's fearfully and wonderfully made by a creator. It's what I believe. And so my body releases a chemical. That chemical is acetaldehyde. When acetaldehyde is released into my bloodstream and it gets into my digestive system, it helps me to digest alcohol. But that by itself is an allergy. An allergy by definition is an abnormal reaction to something normal. You see? So other people, they don't happen. So that in itself is an allergy. But that's not the whole story. The whole story is the same chemical that is released into my bloodstream to help me to digest alcohol. When that chemical passes through my brain, it triggers a craving beyond my mental control. And so that would make the statement, 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And a lot of times we've heard that, but we say, why? Why is 1 too many and 1,000? Is it because of my willpower or my race or who my family is or how much money we got or my dad wasn't there and all these different reasons why we're trying to figure it out like any normal human being would? That has nothing to do with any of that. I'm simply allergic to alcohol. I do not digest it the same way. When it goes into my system, I can't process it. Acetaldehyde is released, and it triggers a craving beyond my mental control. And so we talked about that, and we said, well, what can you do about the way that your body digests alcohol? And almost inevitably, when I ask that question, everybody says, well, don't drink it. That's a different answer to a different question. It has nothing. What can you do about the way that your body digests alcohol once it's there? Nothing. That's what makes us powerless. We talked about a spiritual malady and a mental obsession, and the mental obsession is triggered because of the spiritual malady. And the spiritual malady we discussed in our big book would be described as restless, irritable, discontent, full of fear, can't make a living, blah, 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 blah. All these different things. The world would say, or the church might say, that it's sin. Some people would say, I'm crawling out of my own skin, that I don't feel comfortable. Nothing really is making me happy. I don't fit in. I'm weird. Right? All these different adjectives to describe this spiritual malady, but we here at the workshop would use one word, and that one word would be misery. When I'm walking around restless, irritable, discontented, full of fear, just don't feel comfortable, don't feel like I fit in nowhere, don't feel like I belong. I'm constantly apart from everybody and everything. I don't feel connected to nothing. And when I'm walking around life with this, when all them adjectives, then what I really am is I'm miserable. When the big book starts to talk about, I don't have enough time to go through page for page here, but you can look this up for yourself. When the big book starts talking about a spiritual malady, it says 2 things right after. It says, after a time, the alcoholic cannot differentiate the true from the false. And then it says, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Well, what do you think they're talking about? That I have been walking around with this spiritual malady for so long, it's more normal for me to be miserable. I done got used to it because I don't know that there's nothing else. I can't differentiate the truth from the false because I don't know what the truth is. How are you going to know what you don't know? It is impossible. It is impossible. So that's why we come here, right? If I'm walking around life and I'm restless, irritable, discontented, and I've been having that going on for all my life, even since I was a kid, and I somehow then adapted to it and got used to it. And I tried sports and school grades and women and cars and money and sports and everything you could think of to make that go away, to fill the emptiness. And early in my life, it was sports and being competitive. And I'd get the attaboys and I'd hit a home run and everybody'd be cheering. I'd be running around the bases feeling good as could be. I come in, they pat me on the head. But guess what happened? The next guy I'd go up to bat and it'd be over. It'd be over. Then I'm just a regular guy back on the bench again, feeling all weird. You see? And so the shine would wear off of every single thing that I tried to use to fill that emptiness. But then I drank. And alcohol did for me what nothing else
in the world ever was capable of doing. It solved this problem right here. It made me feel like I was a part of. It made me feel taller, stronger. I was able to talk to the girls. I was able to talk to the fellas. I felt completely at peace and ease with everybody. Nothing, no home run did that for me. No amount of money did that for me. No inclement weather did that for me. Nothing did that for me. So alcohol is not my problem. Alcohol is my solution. And if you're an Alcoholics Anonymous, and by this time, we're going to talk about this when we get to this third step, if you still think alcohol is the problem, by this time, especially after doing the second step, you're getting hints of, wait, maybe alcohol is not the problem. Maybe there's something else going on here. That's what we want to talk about today with the third step. And so if I'm miserable, my brain says, Mike, go make money, go do this, and to some degree, I'm driven, is what the big book would say. I'm driven. It means I don't have a choice. I'm not choosing things on my own. Right? I'm driven to do these things. And so my brain's driven to try to fill the emptiness, the misery. Go make some money, hook up with her, go to this place or do this, do an adventure, whatever, all these different kind of crazy things that we think of to try to fill the emptiness, and none of it works. Then my mind, subconsciously driven, would say, I know it works, Mike. Go get you one. And then it turns into obsession. It's all I can think about. And that obsession, I want to try to challenge you to believe that obsession is really my brain trying to protect me from being miserable. That's really what that is. My brain just knows. And so my brain, I'm obsessing with this drink. I can't think about, you say stuff to me like, won't you call before you drink? Are you kidding me? If I have an obsession to drink, I didn't forgot about you. I'm not thinking of you. I'm not definitely calling you to talk me out of it. If I have a thought to drink, I can do that. The thought of drinking, the thought of doing other stuff, there's a difference between a thought and an obsession. Big difference. Let's not get them twisted. They're not the same. You guys all remember the times where you just were driving down the road or everything was good and all of a sudden obsession kicked in. You didn't even think about it. Next thing you know, you're wherever you're at. And you're like, what the hell did happen? That is what our big book will call a mental obsession. You're not going to be able to think your way out of that. It's an obsession. And so the question becomes, what can I do about the way that my brain is wired to protect me from being miserable? And the reality is there's not a single thing I can do about it. It's just the way it's wired, and therefore I'm powerless. It has nothing to do, once again, with who my mother was, who my father was, how much money I got, how much money I don't got. My race, age, creed, any of that stuff, religion has nothing. Willpower is what I used to believe. It had something to do with my willpower. And I would fail and fail and fail and fail. And I didn't get this because I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Spirituality, simply put, is that if I can't even see my own spirit, if my spirit is sick, if I have a spiritual malady, and we would call it a spiritual sickness, I can't even see your spirit and I can't see mine. How am I going to get my hands on it to fix it? I can't. It's beyond I can't even really comprehend it. And so therefore, I'm powerless. This is why we're saying we're powerless, folks. This is alcoholism. We had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic, that our lives had become unmanageable. Right? We had to fully concede to our innermost self that we're alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. You see? This is alcoholism, and you got to have all three. And if you understand this, hopefully we've made this presentable in a way that's understandable, that you can look into your own experience and say, yeah, that makes sense. I get that. That I've drank so long and I've done all these different things. This is what the hell they were talking about when they said physical allergy, mental obsession. For the longest time I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous, they said that shit and I had no idea what it meant. No idea. It's handcuffs, crack pipes. That's what I thought it meant. I really had no idea. And I really believed that it had a lot to do with my willpower. The truth of the matter, my willpower has nothing to do with the way that I'm biologically created to be allergic to alcohol. What the hell does willpower got to do with that? Nothing. You see, in that hyphen, if you was to draw the line there, the hyphen would be here. Admitted I'm powerless over alcohol, that my life has become unmanageable. My life is not unmanageable because I don't have insurance. My life is not unmanageable because I lost my job. those are certainly symptoms or outside circumstances that may highlight that my life is unmanageable. But I'm not saying that my life is unmanageable because I live in a sober house. I'm not saying my life is unmanageable because I got penitentiary numbers or been to the county jail or been in the Oriental house or back in rehab again or detox or whatever the hell you think up. Only got one headlight or, exhaust fell off. My life's unmanageable. My exhaust fell off. I hear some crazy stuff that people are saying why their life is unmanageable. The problem with me saying that my life is unmanageable because my exhaust fell off, because I'll go get the damn exhaust fixed after a couple weeks of work, and then what? Then my life is now manageable again? It's not the truth. It's a disservice. I'm telling you, it's a disservice. My life is unmanageable because I have a spiritual malady, and I'm going to be driven to try to fill the emptiness. And I'm going to reach out for anything in the whole, anything or hers and hims and its and that's and all kinds of activities and stuff. I'm driven to do it. And I'm going to do it unconsciously. And if I'm constantly driven to do this, how could you be successful? How could you take care of your responsibilities in an adequate way? It's just too much. So that's what makes my life unmanageable. And if we ask for problems, and I've done this with my guys, what's the problem you got? And they say, all kinds of different shit, whatever it is. My damn exhaust fell off. Why is the exhaust fell off? Because I didn't take care of it. Why didn't you take care of it? Blah, blah, blah. And they go around and around and around and around and around. And you know why? It's such a cheap way to concede to your innermost self that your life's unmanageable. Because it ain't the damn problem. The reason why, if the exhaust fell off, and I say, why, it goes around and around and around and around to nowhere. It goes nowhere, you guys, because it's not the problem. This is the problem. And that's a big deal. And so if this is the problem, then what's the solution? The solution is step 2 through 12. You see? And then last week we talked about step 2. And a lot of times we talked about, and I don't care how you come to believe it, it's none of my business, whatever works for you by all means. I'm just going to share what the big book says. Right? So, what you'll mostly hear in Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12-step program as far as that goes, is all I had to do was be willing to believe. Is that true? 100% that's true. But if you look in your big book, because you got the same one as me, and sometimes that's weird, because I don't understand. I go to some of these meetings, and it's like they have a different book. And it's just like, where did you get this shit from? I'm a little bit confused. And if you're new, that can be difficult because you're insecure and you don't know. And if you got a big book sponsor and you go to one of these damn meetings, they're talking about whatever, you're going to be confused. And so Mark Houston would say something all the time. He'd say, don't let anybody read your big book for you. And what he meant by that was, if you hear some shit at a meeting or hear something at a meeting, go look and see if it's in the damn book. Very simple. And so in the big book, it's going to have quite a few things to do before it asks that question, do you now believe or are you even willing to believe in the power greater than yourself? It's going to ask you to lay aside prejudices. It's going to ask you to express the willingness to believe. It's going to ask you to not let any prejudice you have against spiritual deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. In the workbook guide that we give you, we went ahead and found all the terms. And so just doing exactly what the big book says, don't let anything you have inside of you deter you from honestly asking yourself what these terms mean to you. These are things that the big book is asking us to do before I say, do I now believe or even willing to believe? And you're not supposed to be on this for a year. You better hurry up and do this. If you're an alcoholic like me, the window will close and you will go back out. The obsession will return. It's not meant to be forever. And so the big book's asking me to do this, and then it presents me after I do all these things, prejudices, lay them aside, express willingness, asking myself what these terms mean to me. And after I do that, there's a crazy spiritual thing that happens that introduces me to a question. And the question is, are you now willing to believe? Or do you believe that there's power greater than yourself? If you do the work that the big book asks you to do, almost every time, you'll say yes. What I did, and if you're like me, you probably are. Somebody asked me that question. I know how to give right answers. I've been in treatment. I've been all over the damn place. And I'll say, yes, because I know that's the right answer. right? Yes, I am, but I don't know what it means. Then, if I do the stuff that's described in the big book, here's another question. I believe God can restore me to sanity, but I don't think he wants to because I'm such a bum. I don't think the loving God of all the world would have anything to do with a bum like me. I lost my children and I stole from my mother and I'm a piece of junk. How could a God want anything to do with that? It's very difficult for my human mind to rationalize or to be able to reason out that a loving God would still want to do something like that for me, the most undeserving, right? And so if you do that work, that stuff will come out. What do you believe about God? I believe God don't love me. What else do you believe about? I believe God is loving, though. So it's very contrary with the same question. And so if you looked inside yourself and you did the second step inventory, if you want to even call it that, it's a very powerful thing. Extremely powerful. I was telling the ladies before the meeting, if I had to pick a favorite step, my favorite step would be step 2 because of that reason. It changed my life. The reason it changed my life is because the statement is true, the question is true. What first comes to mind when someone mentions the word God is the most important thing in your life. When you think of the word God, what comes to mind quite possibly could be the most important thing in your life as an alcoholic. If I have all these prejudices inside of me and I think God is far away and I'm beyond redemption and he don't really love me, when I think of God, it's going to be like, he's way far away. He's way over there working with the people who deserve it. And I'm not going to qualify. And so if you do this work, God already knows. He already knows. We think we don't know. We think we're hiding it. We're great stuffers, but he already knows. And a lot of guys that I sponsor have termed this exercise, I'm going to read my letter to God, right? When I first did this exercise, I was scared to death to do it because I had believed some religious things that would tell me that I'm not getting in, or there's punishment, or this and that. And so when my sponsor asked me to go, after I did it, he tricked me because he didn't give me that information before. I said, I got it done. And he said, go to a spiritual place and read it to God. I was like, oh, shit. So I went to a spiritual place, and I said this because I thought I was getting zapped or swallowed up or something was bad. I was going to have a heart attack. I said, God, my sponsor told me to do this because it was on him. I didn't want to. And I said, I believe this about you, and I don't believe this about you. And I was scared to death, and I was crying, and it was like, for the first time in my life, I was being authentic with the Creator. I can look back and articulate that, but I didn't know what the hell was going on then. I was being authentic. God, I believe this about you. Hey, I never seen that happen before. It's very difficult to believe. If I was the only person in the world, you'd still love me? Man, I don't believe that. And God, I don't feel that way. And I had that conversation with God through that work. And what happened was some amazing shit happened. And what happened was this. I had an intuition that said this. Who do you think you are? And I was like, oh, I'm about to stroke out probably or something. And I was scared. I was like, oh. And my very next intuition was this. Simply, it don't matter to me what you believe or what you don't believe. It don't change me. It only changes you. And I got free. I got so free. It was so incredible to be able to be honest and have an authentic relationship with God in that way. It was just amazing. So then when I did go to my third step, it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't afraid no more. I didn't bring in a bunch of prejudice and baggage. I don't care. If you've done that, by all means, whatever works. And I promise you, and I tell the guys this, if there was another way to recover from what we got, I would tell everybody about it. You couldn't get me to shut up. You're not going to get me to shut up now. I mean it, because I know what it's like to suffer. I know what it's like to be hopeless and trying and over, and I know what it's like, and I get it. You see? And I love myself enough to love you to tell you the truth. And so if eating grass would get you sober, we'll go out there and push the snow away, and I'd pick it, get some people to help me, and we'll come in here and eat grass together, and we'd all be great. But I don't think eating grass is going to get you and keep you sober. I think this will. You see? And so we read these letters to God. I don't know what your experiences has been today or this week as you've done that. I talked to a few of the guys who have done this. The guys I sponsor have all done it, but there's some guys doing it for the first time. And a lot of times there's a great amount of apprehension and fear, and it's a little bit awkward for them. Of course it's going to be. Of course it's going to be. And so tonight we're going to go into the third step, but I wanted to recap the traditions because I've been skipping on them a little bit. And so the first tradition is our common welfare, the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so if you're an alcoholic, if you know about what kind of created the traditions was, there's never really been anything except for spiritual experiences to help alcoholics recover from alcoholism. The only thing down through the ages has been here and there, once in a while, people have what are called vital spiritual experiences. This is what the big book says. But there was a group that came about, and I don't know the dates and times, and I'm not a historian, but the group was called the Washingtonians, and they were, I think it was 5 guys in a bar that said, hey, let's help each other get sober. And they said, all right, let's go for it. And it worked. The craziest shit in the world is it really worked. And they were helping each other get sober. And Alcoholics Anonymous in a couple of years, probably, according to our big book, it was a couple hundred members. The Washingtonians in a couple hundred years was a couple 100,000. Their movement was moving, it was growing, it was working. But they got involved in a whole bunch of different stuff. They got involved in politics, temperance movements, all kinds of different stuff. They bickered among each other and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't have traditions. And so as quick as they grew and as fast as they blew up, because they didn't have any boundaries, because they didn't have any structure, they disappeared. And so that was the only movement ever known that I know of that's ever been effective in helping alcoholics to get and stay sober. The only other thing that we have since the Washingtonians is Alcoholics Anonymous. And then when Bill heard about this, this is what he created this is where the traditions were born. They were born out of experience, meaning that every tradition was created because somebody did the opposite. Alcoholics Anonymous failed in tons and tons and tons of ways. Right? And so the very first one, which would mark, be a hinge for the rest of our tradition, would be our common welfare comes first, that my personal recovery is second to that unity. And so if you want to think about it in your home groups or wherever you're at, I mean, you get in some of these committees and it's difficult to be with some personalities. But that tradition, which is very contrary to my selfish nature, says for me to put the common welfare of whatever first before my personal agenda, right? We've been at home group meetings where you have discussions on stuff. You know, me and Rachel watch FBI files and, you know, murder unsolved cases and all these different things. And I watched tons and tons and tons of them. And what I've seen, there's a little bit of a pattern. And the pattern is, especially when we see the guys or girls who've been sent to prison for life and were wrongfully convicted. You know what happens a lot of times in them wrongful convictions? Out of 12 jurors, 11 of them would say, guilty. 10 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, they're still in the jury room debating, and the one poor guy's like, I don't think he did it. And they're like, man, come on, man, we're trying to go home. We're gonna go back home, I'm hungry. And they start pressuring him because of that reason, and then he's like, fuck, guilty, fuck, let's get it over with. And then a poor man's soul, poor woman, goes to prison for life because the pressure there, you see? I know it's a little bit, you know, it's not, nobody's going to prison for life, but you might drink. How about that? You see? And so in your home group meetings, a lot of times you'll have that same thing happen, especially if you are new. You'll have everybody in the group say, I think this and this, and you might disagree and you might never say nothing because you don't want to rock the boat or because you want to hurry up and go home. And I want to tell you that you are a small part of a great whole, and your voice does matter. I promise you. There's some strong personalities in Alcoholics Anonymous, some big egos, all of us, it's all of us, right? Some of us are a little bit more quiet, and our self is going to manifest in different ways. But I promise you, it's just as pertinent. And so if you want to go to a home group meeting and you got to go and you don't care, then just don't attend the damn thing. Just say, I got to go tonight. Don't sway your group because you got shit to do. You know what I mean? Don't be at a meeting, be in the damn meeting. You see, this is literally the only hope we got. I don't know nothing else. If there's some other stuff to do and go do, I'd say go and do it. But if you're in a home group meeting, what's the purpose of the meeting? And we want to talk about the money and the coffee and all these different things at the meeting, and the common welfare of the group comes first. You better know what the purpose of the damn meeting is. The purpose of every single meeting, first of all, every meeting in the whole wide world is named after the damn book. Every one. Although some, you wouldn't know that. God bless them, right? There's no such thing as a bad meeting, but some are working on it, right? The purpose is not the coffee, and I mean, those are all great things. The purpose of every single meeting is to help the alcoholic who still suffers. The twist on that is the alcoholic who still suffers can be the person who's been sober for a while. And if you've been alcoholic and you've been sober for a while, you've came to meetings and you've been suffering. It's just how it is. And so my job is to come here, if you've had a spiritual experience, is not to come here to suck juice out of the damn meeting. I'm not coming to this meeting hoping that one of you shares some shit I never heard before. It's going to revolutionarily change my life. That's not probably going to happen. I'm going to hear some different things by all means, but I'm not going to the meeting like, oh, I need to get to a meeting so I can fill up. That's not my goal. After you've had a spiritual experience, the purpose of me going to the meeting is to be helpful, to give myself away for even if it's that 1 hour. Sometimes I pull up to this meeting, I pull up in my truck and I say, God, forget the bills and the jobs and Rachel's driving me crazy. God bless you, baby. I love you. And this and that. God, just help me do whatever I can. And with that motive, with that agenda, with that drive to be that way, with the thought of it, because it's contrary to me. I'm selfish. I'm self-centered. I'm not other people centered. I'm just not. Without the spirituality of the program, I'm me centered. And so if I can do that and I come in here, amazing things happen. People ask me questions or they say stuff to me. Man, thanks for that one time you said blah, blah, blah. I don't even remember saying it. I had many fellows say to me, Mike, you were the first man who ever told me they love me. Not in a freaky way. I mean, I've been in the penitentiary. You don't say that. What up, bro? I love you. You just don't do that. But the Bible, and I hate to go there, would say that God would take my stony heart and give me one of flesh. I'm a new creation. The big book says stuff like I'm reborn. And so I get a heart and I'm rocketed to the fourth dimension of existence. I get to be who God created me to be. And I've been rescued from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body quite naturally with that amount of spirit that takes to restore someone to sanity that has been. I'm going to love you. I can't help it. I don't want to love some of you, I promise. But I do. And I'll do anything. I legitimately will do anything I can to help. Because I've been rescued from the yawning jaws of death, you see? And so the purpose of us, the unity, our community is so important. And if we have a group, our home group is the groups that's been known all through the ages, the groups that are more like family tend to be the groups that are more successful with helping alcoholics. It's a fact. And you ask any old timer, that's just how that goes. There's some groups that are not so tight and some groups are tight. But when you start getting groups that are close like a family, guess what happens? The drama. I'm mad at him. They didn't look at me right at the meeting. Or whatever. Right? There's that stuff. But all the time when I get upset about that stuff, all that is a blessing. That's God using that person to bring up some darkness in me that I need to deal with. And what the blessing. Now I can choose to keep you away. I done did it. I didn't learn how to do it. I was on the streets and in the jails and all that stuff. I'm good at giving you the cold shoulder and giving you that look, just says stay the F away from me. I can do it good. Get me real untreated, I'll do it now. But the spiritual principle is that this unity that the first word of the first step is, people say that's the most important word of all the steps. We need each other. And so I want to encourage you to consider that when you are bickering with, each other or some home group stuff's coming up, your voice does matter. I want to encourage you to remember what the big book says, that anytime I'm disturbed by anything that you got going on, that I'm the one who really has the problem, right? I'm the one who I have to take responsibility. And so we lose. I'm not going to do that if I forget this. I lose my way when I lose my why, right? And so the second tradition, anybody want to read it? I don't have it in front of me. Somebody got it? Yep.
For our group purpose, there is but one authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conference.
Thank you. So there's no leaders in Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't have a government per se. We only have servants. And so to some degree, Alcoholics Anonymous is going to require leaders. That's a contrary belief that you're not, if you don't know that, we need leaders in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a fact of the matter. And how do you become a good leader? Is by becoming a good servant. You must become a good servant. You got to make the coffee. You got to set the chairs. And you got to go from there. And so God's not going to give you more than you can handle. If you can't even make the coffee, you're not going to get another job, probably. Or you might. It depends on where you're at, I suppose. But we do need good leadership. There's some great, valuable things that we are discussing that pertains to our fellowship as a whole. And some of us need to be armed with facts, not only about ourselves, but about our literature and how and why we do things. And so that is going to require leaders. You see? Nobody has the right to tell you not to come. I guess if you're here, if you're at that primary purpose group on Thursday night and you're acting damn fool, it won't be long till one of the fellows throw you out. I'm pretty sure of that. We'll try to talk to you and be kind to you, but they're not going to, even if we don't like you, you're welcome here. Right? You're welcome. We want you, unless you're being distracting and causing problems, you're welcome at any means. Nobody can tell you to leave. Nobody governs, you see. We vote for things, treasurer, this and that. And so there's a great amount of trust that we place in the hands of other people. And sometimes it's dull and diminished because we're just so used to doing it. We just see it work so well here that we forget that who we're trusting. Hey, do you know that the treasurer has been in prison 5 times? We don't even think of that. You go to another group, hey, will you be the treasurer of the so-and-so society? Hell no, you're not going to be the treasurer. You've got prison numbers and shit. You know what I mean? They would not trust you. The amount of trust that falls on that, that's the second half of that coin when it comes to, no leaders but trusted servants. So we trust them people to do a job. And we overlook so much things that are very spiritual here. It's overwhelming. Okay, before we move on to the third step, do we have any questions about the first two? Yes, sir. Hey, John. Yes, sir. I can elaborate on that. And that I bring that up because of my own experience coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a couple. But coming to Alcoholics Anonymous after being homeless in the cold, in and out of jail, weighing 105 on the death's door. Come here to Alcoholics Anonymous, go to a meeting, got nowhere else to go, and they tell me to take my time. I'm going to tell you that the big book tells us, just what it says, I didn't write the damn thing. The big book says, we sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man. That's very contrary to take your time. If you were out in the damn lake, ice fishing, I'm an ice fisherman, and you fell in the damn water and it took your breath away, and you're like drowning, and I threw you a vest with a rope on it to pull you in, you would not say, I'm going to take my time before I grab it. Would you? If you did, you'd be trying to commit suicide. So the big book says we sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man because alcoholism is just that damn powerful. It's legitimately trying to kill you. It wants you to die. If it can't get you to die, it's going to ruin your family. If it can't get you to die, it's going to destroy your self-esteem. There's many deaths in regards to alcoholism, I promise you. And so, quite naturally, if you're an alcoholic like me, I know there's levels. I'm not ignorant or naive to believe that there's levels to this stuff. I know that some people have it seems to me that some people have a greater emptiness or spiritual malady. Some people maybe not have as deep as a broken spirit. I do know that there's differences. I promise you I do. I'm not naive in that way. The problem that I see with that is, if, God bless you, my daughter's here. She's not an alcoholic, praise the Lord. If my little girl did become an alcoholic, and she did what alcoholics do, can't even imagine it, it terrorizes me to even consider that. The only hope I would know for her would be to come here. And if my daughter was walking the streets and doing the things that alcoholics do, trying to get another drink, neglecting her children and I would hope that she'd come to a big book thumping meeting of people who's going to tell her the damn truth and tell her, you better not take your time, you better get busy because you might die. And so that desperation, and I know I'm not naive enough I promise you, I know there's a couple other factors. The other factors, the big one is God's grace. There's a big thing called God's grace, and I cannot describe that to you. I can't do it effectively because it's beyond me, but I know it's real. And then the other thing is, maybe you or her does not have that malady in such a deep and empty way that she can take her time. And so I'm not naive to know that there's people like that, but all I'm asking is that those people don't be so naive that they know I need to hurry up and get busy. Because when I sponsor, if you're not like that, you're not going to understand me. And you're going to tell me to take my time, and I'm going to go back out. You know what you're going to say? Not you, John. But you know what you'd say? Oh, he wasn't ready yet. He didn't really mean it. And that's so far from the truth. That's so far from the truth. Some people don't really mean it. Some people really ain't ready. But I promise you, there's a bunch that are. And I promise you, there's a bunch that come to Alcoholics Anonymous and did exactly like me. And I came in and told me to take my time. I said, Mike, do you believe you're alcoholic? I said, yeah, I just got out of jail. Good, good, good. You're on step 2. Are you willing to believe? Yeah, I believe. Easy, no big deal. Boom, you're on. And I couldn't get through, and I couldn't get through, and I couldn't recover because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I don't want you to die, so I'm going to tell you the truth. You see, and all I ask is for the people who have not had that deep of a spirituality, please be considerate of us. Please be considerate that I have this grave emptiness, that I'm driven to do things. And I'm going to drink, and I'm going to go to the dope house, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to steal, and somebody might shoot me, or I might overdose, or I might drink myself to death. Please be considerate of me, right? That's all I'm at. I'll be considerate of you. I know there's levels. Maybe you can take your time. If you're a take your timer and I'm your sponsor, it's going to be a little weird. It's going to be a little weird because I know it in this way. And I'm like, bro, you need to hurry up. And you're like, bro, chill out. And I'm not going to get that because I'm the empty guy. You see? And everybody got a fingerprint. And how do I sponsor with the 12 steps, but I know that everybody has a fingerprint. We're all different. And so until I know you, until I get to find out information about you, I don't exactly know how to approach you. That's why the big book's going to tell me to find out all I can about you. And so then I'll be led. And here's what I believe. God bless his sponsorship. God bless his sponsorship. There's many millions of times I sat across the desk with people and said things I didn't even know where it came from. But God led me to tell them, and it's just how it goes. It's a very powerful thing. Hope that helps. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jan.
Could you spend a bit of time on question 6 where it asks, are you willing to regard yourself as an intelligent agent? Are you willing to regard yourself as a spirit that does other things?
Yes, ma'am. I think that's on page 49. Somebody helped me with that last week. 49 in the middle of the page, it says, instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of it all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it, is what the chapter says. And so to some degree, it's a challenge. If you're like me, and it's kind of like what we talked about, like I believed that God could restore me to sanity, but I didn't think he would want to. The reason I didn't think he would want to is because I was such a crumb bum. Because I hurt so many crumb, like for real crumb bum, like just a wretch. And so I didn't think that the creator of the universe, this loving God, would have anything to do with me. I sure never was I willing to believe that God would have me help other people, that I could be a spearhead of his ever-advancing creation. How could that be possible? I got sober in an abandoned basement and ate pizza off the sidewalk. A lot of you guys have heard my story. I drank the water out of the hot water tank. I couldn't figure out how to use it, so I poked a hole in it. I ate TV dinners on twig fires in the back of the dope house that was boarded up. What do you mean, intelligent agent? It's asking me to be willing. Are you willing to regard yourself, instead of regarding ourselves as an intelligent agent, spirit of God's ever-advancing creation, we chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word. And so it's just for me to think differently. Wait a minute, maybe, just maybe, there is this loving God who can still use me, who can still give me purpose, and who can still give me hope and put me in the lives of sick and suffering alcoholics to try to rescue them from the same thing I got, right? I hope that helps. It's just such a neat question, I think, that always gets overlooked and barely ever talked about, so we put it in there. Because, wow, am I an intelligent agent for God? That's almost unbelievable. I'm a crumb bum. How's he using me, right? Okay, anything else, folks? Okay, moving on to step 3. I'm going to start at the A. I'm going to read it a little bit, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to try to keep this going here. A, that we're alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, probably no human power could have relieved us of our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. If you have done the first step and you understand this, if you concede to your innermost self that you got this going on, it's a revolutionary change. It's a revolutionary change. Because for the most part, you probably believe that this has something to do with your willpower or who raised you or where you were raised or some abuse you've been through or something like that. You believe that that's what it is. If you understand this and you fully concede your innermost self that you're an alcoholic, then we do the second step work. We read our letters to God, if you want to call them that, and then this. The big book says, being convinced, we were at step 3, is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. What does that have to do with drinking? This is a great indicator, a great highlight, if you will, that the problem is not alcohol. Right? This is really where it starts to switch your gears here. I thought my problem was alcohol. And this is saying it's going to describe to me my selfishness and being driven and all these different things. This is where we kind of change our focus. And I know that a lot of people believe, especially if you're new, that the problem is alcohol. And the big book is here going to try to start to change our thinking a little bit. It's going to reveal some truths about what's really going on. That alcohol is not the problem, that the problem is me. The way I think, the way I process, how I'm driven, so forth and so on, right? And so if you're an Alcoholics Anonymous and you're going to meetings and you think the problem is alcohol, you're wrong. The big book is pretty clear that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. Right? Just what do we, it says that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. And then it says, just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? Well, just what do we mean by that? Meaning, what does that got to do with me drinking? Well, just what do we mean by that? Remember we talked about if you're brand new and you come to AA and you see the 12 steps hanging on the wall at the meeting, if you're a good newcomer like I'm a good newcomer, I should look at them 12 steps and say, that has nothing to do with my life. Nothing. Not one single thing. And only if I'm desperate enough and am I beaten enough am I willing to even try it. But for the most part, I'm going to look up there and say, psst, what does that got to do with anything? Right? Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Ask yourself that question. If you look back through your life, when you run your life, when you manage your life, has it been successful? Make it personal. Make it about you, you see? I am convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I have not only, Aaron said something last night, blew me away. He said, it's crazy how the book Alcoholics Anonymous is extremely applicable to the person who's drinking as it is applicable to the person who's sober. I think that's a profound statement. It's very true. It doesn't matter how long you've been sober, you will definitely fall into this. It says, on that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most of us try to live by self-propulsion. Each person, and it's going to go on to this actor thing, I try to live by self-propulsion, meaning I am trying to force my way through life to do the things that I think I need to do. I'm going to, big books talking about the actor, I'm going to arrange things in all my ways, and I'm going to think it's good. I really believe it's good. I believe it so much, I'm going to try to arrange you to do what I think. And when I'm arranging you to do what I think, I'm stepping on your toes. The big book's going to say later on that those people are going to retaliate. And it's going to say seemingly without being provoked. Seemingly. They've been provoked, but just don't seem like they've been. Right? You guys know that. You've been in relationships and you got families and stuff like that. And we've all done it. I've tried to arrange things to suit myself and don't even know that I'm trying to arrange things to suit myself. Each person, like the actor, wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. That's what we really believe, folks. Here's the crazy thing about this. I believe I would bet $1 million on my new Harley. How about that? I don't got $1 million to bet, but I got a Harley. I would bet my Harley that when this is happening, you don't know you're doing it. Because when it's happening, when I'm doing it, I don't know I'm doing it. I don't even know I'm doing this. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. I really believe this. When I'm behaving this way, when I am trying to self-propel, when I'm trying to arrange life and do this, I really believe it's the right thing. I really do. Everybody, including himself, be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may be somewhat virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, modest, and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. And if you take all them adjectives, you can simply call them tools of manipulation. I know how to get what I want. I know what to say and when to do it. And if I can be kind when I want to get my way, what does you get more flies with honey than you do with poo? Right? I can try the nice way first. You know, I can shuck and I can jive and I can say this and I can say that. But if that don't work, I gotta go mean, egotistical on you. Whatever I gotta do to get my way. I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, when we do this, we don't know we're doing it. We've just been living this way for so long, and we're so selfish, it's to some degree a natural part of who we are. What usually happens is the show doesn't come off very well. He thinks life doesn't treat him right. He begins to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still no more demanding or gracious. As the case may be, still the play doesn't suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that others are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, and self-pitying, which are emotional disorders. Is he not really a self-seeker when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can rest, which is a short for wrestle? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrestle satisfaction and happiness out of his life if he only manages well? If you've been sober for any length of time and you've had a spiritual experience as a result of working the steps, I know some people in here are new, but there's a lot of people here I know that's been sober for a while. We somehow revert back to managing sometimes. And for me, it seems like my weakness would be I bring my old ideas to my new experiences. Meaning, I am going to try to run the show. I'm going to be the actor. I'm going to be kind, considerate, mean, egotistical. I'm going to try to arrange everything I'm going to do that most in my newest experiences. Just got married. What role am I going to play? I know the guys are asking me, the husband. Because I think I know what it is. You see? I'm the husband now. And I got to do this, and I'm going to manage and arrange the lights and do all these different things, right? Just had a kid. Now what role am I? Dad. I got to be dad. And I try to do, I'm wrestling satisfaction, and I'm trying to do that as best I can, instead of what the big book and the spiritual way of life is asking me to do, is just to take it as it comes. To practice the principles on all my affairs. What principles are you talking about? These 2 through 12. Practice these principles in all my affairs. Not the dad principle or the husband principle. Stage characters, right? The 4th step's going to ask us, what role are we playing? Who do I think I am? You see, it's going to ask me these kind of questions when we get into this inventory. But I am going to do it. Aaron?
I just wanted to add this something real quick, man, because it was part of my experience with manipulation. And, you know, when I do win, when I do finally get my way, which I always do, okay, it's still not going to be enough. You know, when I'm trying to manage satisfaction and happiness by just managing well, we'll get everything I want, and it's still not enough. You know,
Thank you. That's exactly right. And I want to just add to that is that when I do get what I wanted so bad, it ain't usually what I needed. I got what I want. Unfortunately, what they say, you might get it. And I get it, I'm like, damn. And so when I manage outcomes and so forth and so on, what always inevitably happens is I manage crumbs. I manage crumbs. You see? Okay, let's skip the page. If you're following me, it says selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that sometime in the past we made decisions based on self, which later places us in a position to be hurt. What do you mean selfish and self-centeredness? That's the root of my problems. I thought alcohol was. I thought drugs were, or she was, or whatever. And the big book is very clear that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems. And so sometimes, I hope you can see this, well, I'll try to erase some stuff up here. If you have problems in life, whatever they may be, and you're an alcoholic, and so you got fear. This is the selfish tree, if you didn't know that. Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Fear, resentment, lust, greed, whatever the hell you want to put on the selfish tree. You know, the love of money. You're mean. You stink. You don't brush your teeth, whatever, right? Whatever you want to put on the selfish tree, what we do, without a solution, what we do is, if I don't brush my teeth, my breath is stinking, right? And so I say, oh, I got to fix it. And so I try to pull that. That's obviously it's not. But anyway, if I pull that fruit, right? I'm gonna go get some breath mints or whatever, anyway, whatever I do. Then what happens usually is that problem will grow back in double. If I reach up to get fear off me, if I try to say, I'm just going to will my fear away. Or if you're scared of spiders, just let them crawl on you. What crazy shit is that, right? I'm not doing that. I don't care how spiritual I am, right? I'm not doing it. If I try to manage or pull these fruits off of this tree, they inevitably grow back, right? And so all these fruits are as a result of from the root, and the root is selfishness. And from the root of selfishness are going to grow all these different problems. And same thing as when I manage my life. What's my problem? Fear's my problem. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going around and around and around. And so the big book says that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems. And so that's where I got to get to get better, right? So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. It's almost impossible for a selfish person with a selfish mind to come to the idea or the awakening that they're selfish. You're too selfish to realize that you're selfish. I'm too selfish to realize that I'm selfish. I'm too selfish to know that when I am being selfish throughout the day, that I am being selfish throughout the day. I have woken up spiritually to some degree. I can come to. I can get these pauses. I can have other people. I have woken up spiritually to some degree where I can see it a little better. The big book says I've entered the world of the spirit. If I've entered the world of the spirit, then I can see these things, right? That's a 10-step thing. We're going to talk about that later. But for the most part, I'm not even going to know I'm being selfish. I don't even know. I'm driven. I'm driven. So if you are in a car in the back seat and the car turns left, what did you have to do with it? Nothing. You're being driven. I promise you that some of the things that you've done in your life, some of the poor decisions that you've made, some of the crazy stuff that you've done, you have been driven to do it. Not only when it comes to alcohol, but when it comes to relationships and finances and all these different things, we are simply in the backseat being driven by selfishness and self-centeredness. 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, and self-pity. We're being driven by it. And so the quote would be, I can't have any regrets because regret means I had a choice. When I'm being driven, I don't have a choice. You see, there comes a certain amount of accountability and responsibility, and I believe for myself that grace runs out when I become accountable. Because I'm going to need that grace in some other area of my life now, right? So once I'm aware, then I become a little bit more accountable. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. The big book is pretty clear. Above everything, more than anything, we must be rid of this selfishness. Why? Because if we don't, it'll kill us. That's strong language. I don't think they're exaggerating. You see, I think they mean it, what they're saying. I've seen a lot of alcoholics die. A lot. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions of the Lord, but we couldn't live up to them even though we'd like to. Why not? The big book back in the past chapter says the needed power wasn't there. That's why. I can't practice spiritual principles. I'm going to have a difficult time practicing spiritual principles in my human strength. We got it wrong, folks. We got it wrong. We went to the churches, we did this, we've been to the spiritual places, we learned all these spiritual things, and we grabbed a hold of them, and we're so selfish, we heard to be this or to be that, or this is spiritual do, and we're so selfish, we just thought we was going to go out there and get it done. I'm going to go and do it. You missed it. We missed it. I'm not going to be able to go out there and do spiritual stuff and practice these spiritual principles unless I have other power to help me to do it. The big book later in the next chapter is going to say I'm supposed to allow God to demonstrate through me what he can do. So if I'm supposed to allow God to demonstrate through me what he can do, then what's in the way? What's in the way is me. What's in the way is me, this selfishness. You see? Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our power. We had to have God's help. And so the big book is saying that we are so selfish, and I think I can be kinder and nicer and more spiritual. But the problem is when I'm trying to be more kinder and nicer, usually I'm just manipulating. I'm trying to get something. I got an agenda, right? I want you to approve of me or let me come back home, or I want you to, trust me back in the house or whatever, right? I'm not going to be able to get over my selfishness. I'm not going to think my way unselfish. It's not going to happen. It's great to be thoughtful of it. It's 100% to be thoughtful that you're selfish. I think it's a wonderful idea. Be thoughtful of it. If it drives you to do something, to take some action. The action being, God, please help me. God, I can't be unselfish on my own self. Help me, God. We got to tap into that power in whichever way you do. And what the big book is going to do is going to give us a prayer to pray. It's going to say that we pray this prayer, and in so doing, to the best of our ability, what we're doing is we're giving our life, turn our will and our life over to the care of God. The only way to overcome such a deep-rooted thing, which is the big book says is selfish and self-centeredness, is to give ourselves to God for almost a redo. The big book says after that we were reborn. We're reborn. This is strong language. I'm not going to be unselfish in my human strength. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Are you playing God? What areas of your life are you playing God? What area of your life do you think you know better? What are you constantly up against? It didn't work, obviously. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama life, God was going to be the director. He's the principal. We are his agents. He's the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Stop. First of all, I just got to stop. Just stop, Mike. God, what would you have me to do? Turn my will and my life or my thoughts or my actions. How do I do that in completion? I do that in completion with steps 4 through 12. Simply put, do I think you should do morning prayers and devotions? Yes, I 100% think you should. Absolutely. I think as soon as you wake up in the morning, after you know that you're selfish and self-centered to the core and you're not going to be able to be unselfish, you better tap into some power quick as soon as the daylight hits. The big book is clear. It says, or it kills us. And remember in the beginning of the workshop tonight, we talked about there's many deaths. And if you're out here and if you're going through the day or you're at your job and you're selfish, you're going to kill something. You're going to kill a relationship. You're going to kill your peace, somebody else's peace. You're going to ruin opportunities, all kinds of different stuff, right? And so, yeah, do I think that? Absolutely. The whole purpose of the book is enable you to help find the power of greater self, which will solve your problem. That's the purpose. That's the whole purpose. And so we come to find out that, okay, alcohol is not the problem. Mom wasn't the problem. Because my dad had left, it wasn't the problem. Because of what side of town I'm on is not the problem. I'm the damn problem. And the only hope for a problem that's me is the creator of me. Right? And you've heard that before. You take the broken thing and you take it to the manufacturer, and they're the ones who can fix it best. Same thing. We go to God. We say, God, I offer myself to thee. To build with me and do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Because this selfishness is a bondage. Meaning, if you could think your way out of it, it wouldn't be a bondage. We are not going to think our way out of being unselfish. We are going to try to practice spiritual principles. We're going to try to manage different things in our life. It's constant. We are going to be driven by this in every area of our life. In every area. And after you pray the prayer, it's still going to come up sometimes. It's still going to happen. But we got tools now. So now when I'm managing at home and relationships going bad or something because I did some selfish stuff that I just do, and then I don't understand what's going on, and I'm going to blame Rachel, just for example, because, I mean, she's my wife. So it's her doing this and she's doing that. And I don't have the ability to take responsibility. Then the only tool I got is to double down on my management. That's all I got. I got nothing else. I'm going to double down on these things here. Fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. I'm going to double down on that. That's all I got. But the big book has given us a new tool. And the new tool in this particular step, God, direct my thinking. Right? God, what would you have me do? I offer myself to thee to build. Matter of fact, I offer Rachel to you to build with and do with as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Right? And almost invariably, and almost every time that I'm in those situations, I got custody of my little girl. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm talking about you. When she was 6, and I was a single dad. I didn't know how to be a dad real good. I just knew what I knew, and I knew to love her like God loved me, and I knew to love her like you love me. But when I let her to go to school, it scared the shit out of me. Because I wanted to keep watch over her all the time because all the days I missed and all the neglect I'd given for all the time she'd been alive. And so now I'm with her and I got to send her to school, but I don't know the people who's at the school. And so I want to watch. And buddy, guess what it did? It about drove me crazy. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't let it go. And it was driving me freaking crazy. And myself manifested in that way. And it manifests in that way, and there's a million different ways that yourself will manifest in your life. So I called my sponsor, told him what was going on, and he told me to do this. I want you to get down on your knees, and I want you to pray the third step, but I want you to put Amaya's name where your name goes. And so I did. And I want you to know that still to this day, this has been 15 years later, 15 years later than I prayed this prayer today, would be, God, I offer Amaya to thee to build with and do with as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And when I prayed the prayer, I cried. It was scary, and I didn't want to do it, but I did it because the AA had been working so far, so why not? And guess what happened? I placed my daughter in God's hands and in God's love and under God's protection. And I did what I could do as a father, but no longer was I scared to let my little girl be at school. The freedom in that for me, I'm telling you guys, I was twisted. In a knot, I couldn't take it. It was terrible. And I prayed that prayer and I got free, you see? And so there's no way I would have been able to, on my own strength, been able to be unselfish in that particular area. I would have doubled down on my efforts. I'm driven. Oh, she's at school. Who's going to come? What's going on? I can't take it. What do I got to do? I'm going to go be the janitor so I can watch. I would have doubled down on my efforts had I had no other solution. And so what the big book is doing here in the program is what it's doing is it's giving us this new solution to almost all of our problems. Almost all of our problems is that I am driven by self. Almost all of my problems are that I am Mike focused. It's very difficult for me. It's impossible for me to be others focused or others centered without God's help. It's just exactly what the big book said. I'm not going to be able to do it without God's help. It's going to give us some promises here. And let me read you what it says after it says to pray the prayer. It says, we found it very desirable to take this. We thought well before taking this step, making sure that we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. They say that after you pray the prayer. It should have been before. because it's a good trick, right? It really is. But I want you to do that. Think about that for a minute. We're going to go over to the chapel and we're going to pray a third step together as a group, right? It's a very powerful thing. And I want you to, when you go to this, we'll take a moment of silence, but I want you to think about and I want you to consider or meditate, if you will, that all of my problems are of my own making. I'm not going to be able to practice spiritual principles in my human strength. I can have moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I'm not going to live up to them. And I'm convinced that self-manifested in various ways is what my problem is. And so when I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, or make a decision to turn my thoughts and my actions over to God, what I'm actually doing is I'm committing to the rest of the work. I'm committing to the rest of the work. Let's not mistake. I'm not tricking you here. I don't want to trick you into something and not tell you what is going on. If I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, my thoughts and my actions, what I'm doing is saying, I am going to do the rest of this deal. That's exactly what it is. And what is the rest of the deal? Facing and being rid of the things within myself that are blocking me from God. That's what the rest of the deal is. Okay? Any questions? I didn't get to talk about tradition 3. I ran out of time, but I'll talk about it next week. I'm always one a little behind. But let's, Steve, will you go get the lights for everybody in there? And then we'll go in there, we'll take a third step, and then we'll pray the Lord's Prayer, and then we'll be out of here. So I don't know, I'm guessing that everybody in here don't have the third step prayer memorized by heart, but I would encourage you to memorize it. It's a valuable tool. You can make it in your own words. The big book says the only requirement is that we voice it without reservation. Voice it means speak it. And so what we'll do tonight is we'll take a moment of silence. I'll talk a little bit, but then I'll pray a sentence and then you guys pray a sentence. And I know it's kind of maybe different for some folks who are maybe for the first time taking a third step. This may be something, it's very serious and it's very powerful. And I want you to think that way. Just because we're in here with a group of people, that it doesn't take nothing away from it. It actually adds something to it. It's very vital. It's very powerful. If you're already been sober for a while, this isn't your first third step by all means, but I want you to think of it in a new way. Think of it that, hey, if you take a thimble to the ocean and you'll only get a thimble full of water, how much God do you want? Meaning I can go into the middle of the ocean and all the ocean around me is God. Could I ever take it all in? Probably not, but it's infinite. And right, so for tonight, what we realize in the other room there is that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems. And I don't care how long you've been sober. If you're a day sober, or 20 years sober, or 15 years sober, 50 years sober, that's the root of our problems. Okay? And so the only way to get rid of self is with God's help. And so we pray that here today. And here, let me let you know before, because everybody will get up. After we come off this prayer and we get up, I want you to know that you're no longer your own business. That you, with many witnesses, have given yourself to God in front of many, many people. So you are then going to be tonight, after this prayer, free to work the rest of your steps and be thoughtful of others.
God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thou will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Good job, everybody. Give yourself a hand.